friends. Welcome to Sky House Herbs podcast. I'm Ashley Ellenvoss, a clinical herbalist, and in this space, I share my knowledge and experience with plant medicine to help you on your own journey of healing and transformation. Join me in exploring the ancient wisdom of plant spirit medicine and how it can be used to heal the body, mind, and spirit. We'll talk to experts in the field and share stories from people who've been transformed by powerful plant allies. New episodes are released each Monday, so please subscribe. And now, let's explore this mystical world of plant medicine together. Hey everyone, welcome in. Today I'm joined by my friend and dear colleague, Jesse Wolf Hardin. Welcome in, Jesse.
Oh, thank you.
And today's topic is going to be a little fun because Jesse doesn't know what it is. And today's topic actually comes from one of you, a listener who today just put in a request for a topic. And I thought to myself, this is a great topic. And I think Jesse would be able to speak to it. So in the spirit of magic, we're going to just throw it into the pot of this time together and see what bubbles up. Before we dive into today's content, please, if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, do that. It's super easy, just a click. It helps other people to find my work. And if you find this video to be useful, you can click the like button. And that also helps the algorithm find more folks like us to watch these sorts of conversations. I also want to introduce Jesse and read to you a wonderful bio that will, I think, bring you into the spirit of his work. This is from a bio written from his book, The Hedge Guild Otherworld. This is the companion to his tarot deck. So him and his wife, Kiva Rose, created this beautiful tarot deck, and I'll include a link in the description. And it's not, this isn't just like one of those thin handbooks for a tarot deck. It's a book. So it's beyond useful. And so here is Jesse's bio. Jesse Wolf Hardin is a mind-stirring ecosopher, enraptured father and husband, artist and writer, counsel, musician, activist, historian, presenter, and storyteller. The author of over 1,000 published articles and more than 25 books, including Wonderments, Kindred Spirits, The Practice of Herbalism, The Healing Terrain, The Medicine Bear, and The Plant Healer's Path. Available through online plant healer bookstore, which I'll include a link to, and also distributors, including Amazon. So thank you, Jesse, for being here. And tell folks where you're joining us from.
Well, basically the center of the Gila Wilderness and one of the wildest sections of land in the entire country in southwest New Mexico and the border of Arizona. And this is our restored wildlife sanctuary and botanical sanctuary, sacred place for thousands of years for the Mogollon peoples. And now I'm the primary caretaker for the past 50 years of rewilding and returning sacrament to this wondrous place. It's a pleasure to be able to be in a place like this and still reach out through you in other ways to the world.
Yeah. The work you're doing is amazing out there. And I know sometimes you get stuck there because the rivers flood. And so, you're really at the mercy and the grand adventurous mind of the universe being that far out. And I agree. It's such a gift that through technology like this and your confluences and your Plant Healer magazine, that this work can get out into the world. So thank you for being here. And okay, so you ready for today's topic?
Oh, never ready, always willing.
Okay. So let's talk about father wounds. The archetypal father wound, maybe the personal father wound, and what do we do with that? What do we do with wounds that come from the line of men in our family? And I want to explore this topic. I want to talk about plants. I have a few herbs that I wanted to weave in, but I think this has been coming up a lot, not just in the email that came through this morning, but also my husband and I have been talking a lot about the ancestral father lineage, the male lineage that we are a part of. So it just seemed like, that's what we're going to do. So what is the archetypal masculine, and what is the wound associated with that?
Well, it depends on what kind of wounds you're talking about, of course. I think throughout times, it's been a matter of living up to what we think are the responsibilities of being a male based on male role models that we've had. For the longest time, that was fairly consistent in most cultures, which is to say, we were considered to have the responsibility for the protection of the family, for directing to some degree, and opening the doorways, to be the risk taker that opened the doorways for the rest of the family and the village to follow. It's uh, other things like wisdom, magic, nurturing. All of those are never been gender specific, but somehow the male is taken on just through physical stature alone, this inordinate weight of the world, in which it falls on us, or at least we feel like it falls on us, to not only ensure the safety, but the well-being and the happiness of everything and everybody that we care about. To the degree that role becomes blurred, uncertain, or we feel unable to fully and vigorously fulfill that responsibility and that role, I think that's where the modern wound comes from. Never before, I don't think, in all of human time, have we been so caught up in with not really knowing who we are, what our role is, and what we're meant to do with our strengths and our weaknesses, which all genders, not just the two, all genders, no matter how we define it, have specific things that need to be worked on, things that are special gifts, how to deal with those, fill in the holes, and also fulfill the qualities and the abilities. That's never been so in question as it is now. And so part of a personal quest, for men certainly, is to, what does it mean to be a man? In what ways am I a man in this world? And how can I express and share my feelings with and vulnerabilities without sacrificing uh, the trust building sense of certainty and confidence that has to come with any kind of leading?
Yeah, that's a great point, and I think, this dovetails really nicely also, I think, into the dilemma of many women, which is trying to wear so many hats and also not being sure of what our roles are. So, I think on both sides, because of the way our culture has changed and the way that community and the sharing of community roles has changed, um, a lot of people, I think, probably over the last few hundred years especially, there's a feeling of greater isolation and uncertainty.
Absolutely, very much so. And that's true for no matter how we sexually identify, no matter how we identify in terms of culture, ethnicity, sense of place. Right now, everything seems up in the air because of the genericism and generalization. The same internet that made the entire world accessible to each other has also made things seem a little more common, and people are following more common rules. And even, for example, in Europe, the not just individual roles, but cultural roles are being supplanted by this universal one culture, one way of representing ourselves on social media and to each other in our social interactions. That rips away some of the individuality and the personal artistic sensibility and form and shape and action that was possible forever. And now we have to think, um, where are we? Who are we for the first time? And how do we express what that is in the healthiest way possible, both for us and for the world?
Yeah, it's true, and I think, yeah, the social media definitely changes our perception of what is, like, what is the masculine, what is the feminine, and yeah, and how, and even in the in between world, right? Because it's not completely binary. So in the space where most traditional cultures, including most Native American cultures, there was like space for these different, and they weren't based on gender, but they were based more on the person's, as you talk a lot about, their gifts and their innate strengths and things that they would bring to the tribe or bring to the community.
And that was a vast spectrum. I mean, it's, it doesn't fit the terms that we have now, like, like gender specific, gender fluid, etc., because it was all on a spectrum. It was, you, each and every person was known to have female and male characteristics. You might have a primarily male or female role within your culture, but as far as no one quality or characteristic can be attributed to you based simply on gender. Our men were never not nourishing, not caring, not capable, at least, of all these qualities that we so often put on women, and vice versa. Women have always been not just capable of, but expressive of strength, power, decision making, uh, instigation, intuition, all of these things. So, to one degree or another, these are attributes that were never defined strictly by what physical parts we carry, or even how we identify, but rather we're on this vast spectrum of abilities, propensities, qualities, interests, ways of expressing ourselves. It's People think it odd that somehow they think I'm this ultra masculine Viking, and then they'll also notice that I'm going around in a skirt. That my biggest thing is poetry, and I would do more of it if there was more of a call for it. That all these things that they think of as female, so many of those are things that I ascribe to. I'm the primary, person who decorates in here, who it really matters to me what my physical world is like. I'm connecting in a sensual, sensitive way that I don't want to think that I have to be feminine in order to be sensitive. So I think
Mm-hmm.
the problem starts with attribution of these qualities to genders to begin with. So if we're going to figure out who we are and what role we want to take on, it's not that we have to let go of certain female or male traits and emphasize others. It's that we need to emphasize all the aspects of who and what we are as we take on whatever those roles are. Culture can call them male roles. We can call it a male wound, but basically we're a wounded species where each and every one of us has to come to terms with our most authentic self, our authentic needs, and an authentic calling that gives us purpose and meaning in life.
That's beautiful. It reminds me, I was looking through some of my notes when I was sitting with Matthew Wood. This was back in 2012, so many moons ago. And he said the greatest advice he would give is that we have to try to harmonize the unconscious and conscious parts of ourselves. That peace, we are seeking to create peace between the more delicate insides and tough outer selves. Then we harmonize that with the soul of nature to come into the soul, to come home. Nature is alive. And so, in I love this because it's when we're thinking about the father wound, right? Like what maybe happened to us? What did our fathers maybe fail? How did they fail us in some way? Part of the healing is to look at the conscious and the unconscious parts of ourselves and trying to harmonize, because no one's perfect. It's like to try to think of, everyone has a father wound. I don't think anyone escapes from a parental wound. It's part of being human is having things that you didn't necessarily agree with your parents, or they didn't give you, they maybe weren't capable of giving you something that you needed that they didn't need. Right. So, I think part of what I've been kind of considering is the parts of us that what are maybe some of the unconscious parts of us, and how do we harmonize those with the needs that we have here and now when we're thinking about going inward to try to heal these wounds.
Absolutely. But also, it's like, I think it's important to look at causation, but not necessarily attribution. It's is a father or a mother, for that matter, really responsible for what they can't give, what they were emotionally unable to give, what their wounds did not allow them to share? I mean, at what point do we just break that chain and say, this is what I received, this is the lessons I got from what I didn't like or didn't receive, and now, with that material, with that palette of colors, with that emotional banking, of feelings and impressions and of needs, what can I do with that? How can I use that to form myself? Uh, I hear even more often than I hear how a father has failed us, I hear how a mother is the cause of all of our wounds and problems. And I'm not buying that either. It's impossible, I think, to be for a parent to give everything that a child would hope to receive, no matter what your value system is. but a child should not ever get to a point where they've done something to me or omitted something for which I can never heal, from which I can never become myself. In fact, those things that were omitted, the things you wished you had and didn't get, the traumas that were put on you, even if it was guilt tripping or parents going dealing with their own crap through their children and putting that on their kids, all of those things are very real, but all of them are lessons, and they're all part of this ferment of materia from which we can build and sculpt a truer and stronger self. Without our wounds, including the fatherly wound, uh, we could not possibly be as fulfilled and as effective and even indeed as great as we possibly could be. We need those wounds. Those are part of our gifts. What we need to do is understand them, not be limited by them, but be liberated by them.
Ah, yeah. And you think about how many people, I was listening to a podcast with Oprah Winfrey. You don't even need to say her last name, Oprah. And she was talking about, when her mother passed, it was very complicated for her because, her mother, like every mother, didn't give everything that didn't give her everything that she wanted. And one of her friends pointed out, but what you did that was so miraculous is you took all the broken shards of glass and you brought them and you wove them together into this beautiful offering that you gave. You gave mothering energy to the world through your work and through your philanthropy. And, and she was saying that that's even a gift that can go back in time to the ancestral line. So in some ways, like with the father wound, as you're saying, if we can gather up what we did receive and weave it into a way, and even with sometimes the things that are most beautiful about a person are the parts of them that have been injured and that they've had to go into a deeper place within themselves
Oh,
to
absolutely.
right to find.
Has there
Yeah.
ever been a prophet that wasn't traumatized? Has there ever been a seer, an artist, a musician that truly moves your soul and rocks your world that hasn't been, developed through the process of pain, suffering, trauma, and transformation? I mean, that's so. In a way, we can say, I have taken the broken parts of myself and created something. Yes, but we can also say that even what wasn't given to me that I wanted was part of the gift that makes me be able to give to myself what I
Mm.
most need. Does a parent even know totally what it is that each and every individual soul, because a child's never just a carbon copy of the parent, how can we ever fully know what that person most needs? What we can say is that even what we withhold, if we're a withholding parent, that too is given something to the child because it gives us the impetus to give to ourselves, to parent ourselves, to educate ourselves, encourage ourselves, cheer for ourselves, and set ourselves free as like an adult again and again and again into a world of magic and possibility.
Yeah, so the idea that, yes, take the broken parts and the wounds, but also watch how you're able to take things that you needed from the environment, from maybe you got certain things and ideas from an artist you listened to, or from an uncle who was a musician, or, like how beautiful is the soul and the way it's able to take in from its environment and from its own self, to create a life that is meaningful and that is whole and that is, a healed life.
Well, that goes back to a personal responsibility. I don't mean responsibility as in an obligation. You're obligated to act a certain way as a male, or you're obligated to do certain things for your family, but rather responsibility in terms of the ability to respond.
Mm.
So we each have that within us, and to the degree that we abrogate, that we defer from it, that we don't take on that mantle, and we say we're victims in any way whatsoever, rather than seeing that as tools to use to take responsibility to respond to our wounds, respond to our environment, respond to the possibilities of healing and of fulfillment, because that is where the real change happens, not in accepting our suffering, not in seeing the world as having inflicted anything upon us, but rather seeing everything that's ever happened as somehow or other a gift and a lesson that we can then apply to becoming all that we can be. That is our purpose on the world, not just to manage, not to emotionally or physically survive, not to reconcile the ways that we've been done wrong, but rather to take everything that's ever happened to us, every single tear, every bit of laughter, every inspiration, every suffering, every trauma, and take that and create with it the most magnificent, giving, loving, caring being that we can possibly be. That
Mm.
is wonderful.
And that sounds like freedom.
Indeed. Indeed. We're not held down whatsoever by anything that's ever happened to us, and not by the worst of our fears and our feelings. We're only held down by our reticence and by our lack of self-belief that prevents us from actually making it actionable and moving forward not into just what we're going to do with who we are, but moving forward into the depths of ourselves, the ultimate journey and quest.
Mm. And so, in that way, the plants, the herbs, and nature come along as allies. They're not like things that are filling missing holes, but they're like friends that are coming in alongside you to help kind of guide you and support you along the way.
Absolutely. And this is why nature connection is so important. And it almost sounds cliche now because it's used in so many ways. It begins to, be dismissed, and we fail to fully take in the depth of what that means. But all healing is an act of connection. So we're not just connecting to our wounds, we're connecting to the processes of healing. We're connecting not just to our own selves and our hearts and our needs and our souls and spirits and callings, but we're also connecting to the outer world, and through that outer world to the cosmos, to the universe of potential.
Mm. And yeah, and when we're in like an open and receptive place to feel, I think as Mary Oliver once said, like to feel our place in the family of things, like to really feel like my presence is important in the milieu, in the environment, in the ecosystem of where I've been planted. There is something about nature that, for I think most people who are, I think, inspired writers, thinkers, there's something about the natural world that helps us to remember that connection that we have to all things and to our own place.
Well, and that's where the natural world, and I mean, not just wilderness like where I live, but your pets, your uh, your house plants, your yard, your tiny garden in the back, your rooftop garden, that the birds that land even in the busiest of cities on the windowsill and sing to you, to not just let feel distance from them, but rather to feel like you're pulling them closer, like your connection, your listening, your sense of being bodily and spiritually one being, a living earth that expresses itself through all these different elements, and of which we are each crucial, vital parts. And so each animal, each plant, each herb, just symbolically even, is like a bridge between the mundane, between the accepted, between the business, the superficiality, all of that. It's a bridge to the wholeness, the oneness, to the living Gaia, to the greater purpose, to the family of life, to
Mm.
our purpose within a society, within an ecosystem. And so we can connect through each and every one of those. Just the flower that's sitting in the vase still, that can be the moment if we quiet our minds, even just for a few seconds, and just feel the ways in which we are drawn into the plant, and the plant feels like a part of us. That's our bridge. And then herbs take it a step further because their chemical constituencies contribute to their energetics. So it's not just a spiritual or a symbolic effect, but rather it's an actual medicinal effect on the body. So in the case of any herb that leads to expansiveness or spiritual awareness, any herb that relaxes or opens us up to possibilities, herbs that calm the stress so that the buzz goes away long enough for us to really hear our hearts and hear the natural world around us and what it's saying to us. That becomes incredible allies that become part of our medicine through their medicine.
Mhm. So that makes me think that it doesn't even have to be a specific plant. It could really be any plant that brings you into that state of consciousness. That's the doorway. That's the doorway in.
Absolutely. And that's, and it may not be what we think of as a traditionally medicinal plant either. I was citing examples of ones that have a chemical effect, a medicinal effect in addition. But at any time, a single blade of grass can be the opening to the universe.
Mm,
A
yeah.
single petal of a single flower can be the opening to ourselves. And you can just feel a heart open up as a result of it.
Mm.
Those are not just doorways and portals, they're the actual keys to the work that we need to do.
Mm. I remember when I was a child and, thinking when I was in the midst of some challenging situations inside, I would go outside. When the fighting was inside, I would go outside. And I remember for me, the trees like that, they were my sanctuary. And there was this one birch tree that I just loved. And so I would sit out and I would just hug her. I would just hug that tree. And it was so grounding. And so I felt so supported. This tree was stable. It was there day after day after day. I would wash it and sing to it and take care of it because I loved this tree so much. And, as I grew up, as I grew through adulthood, for me, there's always been something about trees that feels very anchoring in terms of, I understand botanically they're not all male obviously, but there's sort of a masculine quality in tree medicine because of their stability, their uprightness. um how do you feel about that? Like, do you resonate with that, or do you think of trees differently?
Well, I definitely experienced their femininity as well, because at the same time that they're strong like an oak, right? The
Mhm.
Celtic association with the oak and all of its strength and fortitude, and how long it lasts. But the oak doesn't last forever. Sooner or later, the oak falls. Sometimes the oaks are cut down. Sometimes the trees that we connected to in our childhood are bulldozed over for new developments before we're even growing up or shortly thereafter. So, like, these things, there's no sense of permanence for me in being with a tree. What there is a sense of the permanence of my connection to the natural world that I can feel through them. If I hug a tree or if I even touch a tree, what I'm feeling is the life force that's reaching down into the earth, drawing from the earth itself. It's like an outgrowth. It's like a beautiful hair growing out. It's like
Mm.
feathers bursting from the bird. The trees are coming out of something that is them. And by touching them, I'm connecting to the roots that connect to the centers of the earth itself, reaching up into the cosmos like Yggdrasil, connecting heaven with the profane, with the average, with the normal, to the magic and the possibility. So they're, for me, it's not so much that their solidity, but rather that they are in this liminal state, actually, that are transitional. They span between the worlds. Because of that, I think of them as also having a great femininity to them. I certainly see it whenever the winds come and shake the leaves off of the greatest, strongest oak in existence and snap off some of the branches. I
Mm.
certainly see it in the willows that, with the slightest little bit of breeze, sway and undulate in a dance move that few males can replicate.
It reminds me of a conversation I was having. My husband was teaching our girls about the planet Pluto last night. We do little astrology couch sessions. And we were talking about two things can be true, the both and. And, this is a hard one. Even for me, I still sometimes am like, well, it's either this or that. So, this idea like both and, like Pluto can be about dark heaviness, and Pluto means riches and like the
But
wealth of
always,
this, the wealth of a
always,
soul,
yeah,
really well lived.
mm,
It can be heavy, but it can also be bright. And so, in this idea of like when we're holding the idea of the father wound, like it can be a both and, both two things can be true. When we're hugging the tree, I was just imagining, oh, next time I hug a tree, which might be in a few hours, I'm going to try to feel both and, oh, like this is true. Like these both can be true. And
absolutely.
I feel
Well,
like
both
that's
are
a
true.
nice way. Yeah.
It's not even could be. You could just spare yourself the word could be.
Uh-huh.
It's that they are always both. I mean, if a sharp word is a lesson, even if they're not, if a parent's not giving us a usable practical lesson with the words that they're giving us, it's a lesson in how to deal with anger and how to deal with rejection, how to deal with being pushed around, as a kid, and not taking that wound into your adulthood and having it handicap you and emasculate you. So really it's always either or. When I developed a system for an early runic system prior to my oracle cards, uh, which involved these what I called stones, and always there was a flip side.
Mm,
So, if it was move forward, it was also, retreat, draw back into the south. If it
mm.
was, aggression, then it was also, peacemaking. So it was always both, because that's where balance comes from, and no harmony can exist without balance. Even in jazz, where it seems like the beats and stuff are not always correlating, even in jazz music, it's the same thing, where it requires an overall balance between the ups, the downs, the highs, the lows, the fast tempo, the slow tempo. And so in every lesson, everything that happens to us, every wound that we have, flip it over. Just flip it over. See what the other side is, because one doesn't negate the other. It takes both to make it whole.
Yeah. That's so helpful to walk away with that, because I think, just the listener who wrote this question in, I think sometimes, like, I did an episode on the mother wound and talked about some herbs that were, can be specific for different types of trauma and like different subtle energetic shifts in the heart. And I think, there we can see that there are some plants, like one that I think of is sunflower seed is one that Matthew Wood speaks of for the father wound, because it's nutritious, it's oily, it's grounding. But the sunflower itself is a very solar plant. It follows the sun across the sky, so it has a very strong solar association. So you could say, yeah, eat sunflower seeds to nourish yourself. You could say, eat burdock root for grounding and for nourishing. Do oak bark tea, or like do an oak wreath in your house. We could say all these things, and we could also say, these can be symbols. Like, it may not literally be the sunflower seed, but if that seed reminds you of the work you're doing and how you're trying to bring these things into harmony, then we can see it as a tool. It doesn't have to be so literally healing as a plant.
Yes, absolutely. So what have you been thinking about the red pill and all of that that's happening now?
Oh, I don't know. I don't watch the news. What's the
No,
red pill?
it wouldn't be on the news, dear. It'd be on social media.
Okay. What's the
and
red pill?
on YouTube, your platform. No, the red pill, the Andrew Tate and the redefining new maleness, traditional wives, such as Pearl Davis talks about, but rather this almost dichotomization or polarization. But it has to do with figuring out what our roles are in this current time, which is different than it ever was before. So what we have is women who feel like they were just in the last 20 years, feel like they have to define themselves as business women, as being independent, as being as capable as any man, in order to counteract how many generations of women being put down, told they have to stay in the house, they're only cooks and child bearers, etc. But
Mm,
the response coming out of that right now is the trad wife movement, which is that we want to be able to make a personal choice, not dictate it for anybody else. That what's most satisfying and fulfilling for me is giving most of my time to making sure that there's wonderful food on the table, taking care of the home, being the primary caregiver of the children while the male's bringing in the money. Um, there's a price to pay for either way. And one way we may not get to express ourselves as much as a trad wife, for example, in the world, through all of our other abilities, the businesses we could have started, the other things that
mm,
we could have done to affect the planet. Uh, so there's a problem with if we go the other direction, of course, though, where if we're out there all the time, if a woman's always out there defining her worth by how much money she can make, then does she really get as much time with her children as she would like? Or did she forego the pleasures, or for many of us, the pleasures of having children, in order to give all of our time and energy to a career or some outside purpose. For
Mm.
males, the red pill that they're talking about is after, once again, several generations, at least multiple generations of uh, now being told that we have to move away from the 40s and 50s model of male means strength, and if you show any vulnerability, we've taken that now to a new extreme, to where you're almost penalized for showing what was considered to be masculinity, whether it's aggression, certainty, self-confidence, drive, all these characteristics of are just male, but that society has come to associate with maleness. So that's left an entire segment of male beings born with male parts, who don't feel like they really have a purpose anymore, that they can really act out the way that they feel, that they can follow their instincts without being penalized. So they're trying to express androgyny even if they do feel strongly. Uh, my response to that is that all extremes are problematic. Once again,
Yes.
that we certainly need to reclaim what it means to be a strong male in a society, regardless of how that role is defined. But we also need to be in touch, obviously, with our sensitivity, with the poetics of what it means to be a human being on this planet, with the caring, with the nurturing. And so to bring that all into the creation that is us, I feel is essential. But I just brought that to your attention because there's right now a huge divide going on between uh, whether we continue with this process of feeling bad about being male and masculine, just because our parents screamed at our mothers to the point of driving us into a closet, or do we find a place where we can be caring, to not be the ones that yell and suppress and control, and yet still feel fully in our whatever we think of as maleness, whatever we think of as our own personal strengths.
I didn't know it was called the red pill, but that this conversation, I'm yeah, definitely aware of. And I it kind of comes back to, being in touch and sensitive to your soul, like who you are at your most basic level in whatever body or form or culture you were born into, and living that authentic way. And you talk about this a lot in your plant healer podcast series, which I'll include a link if people want. It's a wonderful 10-part series on herb rally. But you were just talking about we have to pay attention to how we're feeling. We have to be authentic and follow our passions. And I think part of it is that people are not trusting themselves, and they're not paying attention to the inner cues, and I would say too, the cosmic cues, right? Like, I know not everyone likes the word God, but I'll just say like a higher power or something bigger than yourself. Like when we're disconnected from that voice and presence in our lives, then all these little things we get caught up in, this and this and this, and I should be doing that. But it's like, no, if you just sit still enough and listen long enough, you'll know just what to do. you know it won't be unclear what role you're here to do and to take. And I
Right.
was raised in a way where, yeah, I did the business thing. I thought that's and I was going to do the business thing and the mom thing, and I couldn't. I decided to do the mom thing, and I still am always going to be an herbalist, and I'll always share what I love. Right now, I'm teaching a lot of kids. I'm teaching, herbs to kids in
Oh,
my
good,
daughter's
good.
school, and oh, it's so fun. And I just feel like, there's nothing wrong with choosing the things that really speak to your heart, and using the gifts. And for me, I've got a lot of like Taurus Cancer energy. Like I'm very much a mom. I've always kind of been that way. And it was once I accepted that, I became happy. Life became easy.
Well, and I wouldn't have had a another child so late in life if that wasn't the most fulfilling thing that I've ever done.
Mm.
There's being a father, and when I didn't do it as well, when I had split up families, when we're having to share kids, and all the things I can consider as possible mistakes, but that were also lessons. And yet this time it was deliberate. It wasn't, we're pregnant and I'm deciding to keep it. It was, I want this child, we're going to make it, even if we have to change the brand of lube, no matter what it takes, no matter what herbs we need to boost it, because this is the way that I feel. My instincts are telling me all the time that I want to give and nourish. One of the best places for me, at least, to do that, and instinctually I know it at the very bottom of my being, is to give that to this young man that I'm now raising, 5 years old.
Mm.
And out of satisfaction I get from being here for him, the amount of pleasure that it brings to me, uh, and the responsibility that I have for it, I could never feel more at right in the world than I do now in this place, with this child, with this purpose. And I refuse to ever choose between him and continue to be a champion of herbalism and continuing to be a teacher. What it is for me is that he inspires me to be enlivened, and I want to then give that enlivenedness to all the rest of you.
And this is why I thought this topic was so perfect and on point for you to speak to today, because I've seen you father, and I've seen you father not only your own son at the confluence, but the men around you, shepherding the next generation of male herbalists in a very kind, jovial, inspiring, encouraging, humorous, and compelling way. And I think that that's such a testament to what you've done. I don't know your background, but just whatever it was you were given from your patrilineal line, like I am just in awe of what you've created with it and how you give it so freely
Thank
in
you so much.
service.
Well, and I that does call for a little bit of credit, because uh, my parents were a blessing, and I have to say that I got more from them in terms of support than I did from trauma. I basically had to run away at age 13 from a very happy home. I wasn't even running away, I was running towards something. But I had to seek out trauma as part of my growth process because I knew I damn well needed some. I was way too happy at home. Uh, but what they gave me that I would like to give to my child, and that I hope everybody can give, is the basics that we all need, even as adults, to move forward, okay, past our shit and into our dreams. And what are those things? It's basically, I see you, right? So being recognized, recognize yourself, and being recognized by those in the world around you, uh, accepting who you are, uh, not blaming yourself for everything, but still taking responsibility for what goes on around you, both for what you do and for what you don't do. uh, Sensing and coming to know yourself on a personal quest that exposes to you the gifts by which you can be most effective in the world. There may be a million things you can do, but there are a few things that you will do better than anything else. Those are your ultimate gifts. Find ways to express those. Don't let anybody tell you you're not good enough. Don't feel bad because you don't have letters of accreditation after your name. Don't feel bad because you don't have a diploma on the wall, or that you only make X amount of figures per year instead of what you think you need. Uh, have self-worth based on how much you love and care. Have self-worth based on how you feel connected to the world that you're so in love with natural wholeness, with Gaia. Feel a part of that. Love yourself as you would love the earth, as you would love a child, as you would love a precious animal in your life. Love yourself as something real and meaningful, and never doubt that your dreams matter. Never imagine that you need to settle for less or compromise anything in this life. It's way too damn short for that. 70, 80 years, give me a break. You don't have a moment to waste. And that doesn't mean you need to be busy every second doing something, but that even in your quiet moment, even in your meditation, even in your sleep, even in the cuddles after lovemaking, that is still part of this active chain of becoming all that we can be. So if I have anything to offer herbalists or anybody else, it does tend to go back to see who you are, experience who you are, recognize that, believe in that. Don't let anybody make you doubt yourself. Take every chance and risk necessary in order to be all that you can be, and give thanks constantly. That makes us part of not just it doesn't make us just staying alive and being a part of society and keep us out of the crazy house or the hospital. It means that we're being maximized. We're the full artful creation of what we can be. We are feeling the wonder of what it means to be us, and we're trying to give that as much as possible to the world. What I find, especially with males, is this massive amount of self-recrimination and guilt, which has to be, gotten past. We can process it all we want. We can process it for a lifetime, but unless we actually get past it, we can't move into what it means to be us. And therefore, we can't know what it means to be healthy or whole or happy.
Mm. And then we can't help the next generation.
Absolutely. And it's all about leaving a seed,
Yeah.
because at our best, the people that we remember now that wrote the great books or the great music or passed on great philosophical lessons, started religions that spiritual traditions that actually benefit people. For the best of what they gave is just a small part, no greater than what we are ourselves being asked to give. And giving to ourselves is not in place of giving to the world. It's just the absolutely essential first step.
Mm. So go out and look at a petal, go out, hug a tree, sit down and wait for the bird to come somewhere by the window. And these are all ways to make that trek back inward so that we can live this life, gathering all the pieces and
Exactly.
living our in our best way. Thank you so much, Jesse. This has been such a I knew it was a risk throwing this topic out there, but I love all that we painted using our words and our ideas and what we've picked up along the way. And I want to let folks know where they can find you. You can go to planthealer.org. I'll include a link in the description. Jesse and Kiva have a whole database, library of books you can buy, the Oracle deck. They have the Confluence, which I'm excited to be teaching at next July in Colorado. And there's a ton of resources, blogs, anything you can think of that has to do with connecting yourself to nature and learning about the plants is there. So head on over there, take a look. And Jesse, thank you again so much for this time to talk about this very important topic.
It's been a great pleasure, as you know. Thank you so much, Ashley.